Hello and welcome to the Business of Meaning podcast. I'm your host, Eric Rosenberg. Over the years, I've had the privilege of helping businesses in the meetings and event industry grow and succeed. And I'm excited to share that experience with you. If you feel alone and overwhelmed, and if you're looking to take your business to the next level, improve your strategy and sales, and connect with like minded professionals, you are in the right place. I invite you to visit eventbusinessformula.com and join our community of event business owners dedicated to exponential growth. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Business of Meaning podcast. And today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Adi Klevit. She is the CEO and founder of Business Success Consulting Group. We both in EO, we met at the EO conference, my EO Deal Exchange, and everything she's doing is absolutely fascinating to me and so essential for business owners. We're going to talk about her journey. We're going to talk about processes. We're going to talk about how you document everything you're doing so that you can delegate and grow your business and more. Adi, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for having me.
Of course. It's a pleasure. I think your journey is fascinating. What you're doing is fascinating. But why don't we start with that? And why don't you tell the audience what is your journey and how did you come to do what you're doing now for almost 14, 15 years?
Yeah, well, I'm actually doing it for longer. I've been 14, 15 years in my own business, but I've been doing this line for almost 30 years.
Wow.
And it really started in my journey when I had to decide what am I going to study, when I went to college. And I decided that I wanted to study industrial engineering. And the reason why is because when I read the description, in the description, it said that it's a combination of science, which I was very good at, but also dealing and working and understanding people, which always fascinated me. So I decided, okay, that sounds like a great journey. And that's where it started in terms of my passion to bring order into companies, to create organization out of chaos and process improvements. So it really started then. So it's been almost 30 years now, and I've been doing this. And then, of course, started my own business about 13 years ago, so almost 14. So started there.
That's awesome. So take me back to when you are studying and you're interested in that. What is the first job that you're finding? Because I don't know many people who are interested in going into business processes and procedure from the get-go.
Sure. So the first job that I had was actually in a bank, improving their processes. So that was my job. I think it was actually, I started my last year in college. And it was fascinating because it was all about, analyzing how data is being stored, where, how to make it more accessible. The data usage of it was definitely like the research into it and understanding it, and then how to make things better in terms of time study of how different parts of the process, how long it takes, how can we improve upon it. So all of that was definitely, it was my first job.
Wonderful. So you're going into that bank and helping them with the process and everything. Fast forward, take us through the moment when you say, enough working for the others. I'm going to start my business. Because it's for every entrepreneur, I think it's fascinating to hear the story of the transition, which is obviously stressing and exciting. What was your thinking process at that moment, and what made you decide now I'm starting my own company?
Good question. Well, I think I always had that entrepreneurial spirit. I started working when I was actually in ninth grade. I started this amazing tutoring business, and then it actually developed, and I continued with it through my early 20s, which was very successful. I had a bookkeeping company on the side, where I was working also for big consulting companies. I also had the bookkeeping company. I had this, I had that. And I worked a lot of entrepreneurs, and I saw what it takes to actually run a business. So I didn't go into it blindly. I knew the challenges. I knew the problems, especially helping them in terms of the finances and the books and the process improvement. So I gained so much knowledge and so much say know-how that I felt, okay, I can do it. And it's either now or never, when I made that decision in terms of like a certain age turn, turning into a certain age or a certain place in life when you go like, okay, it's either I do it now or I will never be able to do it. Because being an entrepreneur in my mind at that time and still now was really about, the sky's the limit, is whatever. I'm willing to work hard. I'm a hard worker, investing time, investing hours, knowledge, etc. So I might as well just do it for myself because I will be able to just get somewhere faster.
Yeah, you said something very interesting, is that you knew exactly where you were going because you've seen with other entrepreneurs. Few people actually realize, are aware of it. They start their business. The people I'm coaching, only the business owners in the meetings and event industry, obviously, that's my niche. But the number of them that started their business without even having business acumen or realizing the challenge, it's always a discovery and an excitement, but a discovery as well. Is there anything that you were not expecting that fell into on your shoulders and you thought, this is what it is to really be an entrepreneur?
It's a good question. I can't think of, there's always like life is full of surprises, right? I've been working with so many entrepreneurs for so many years, and I've been helping them with so many problems that I feel like in some ways I've seen a lot of those problems. So when it happened to me, I wasn't surprised, because you have to understand, it was years of working with hundreds and hundreds of businesses. When I was working as the VP of production for a major consulting company that we dealt with, basically help small businesses. I've seen it when I did the bookkeeping for several construction companies. I've seen it, so, and I've been a trusted advisor to those entrepreneurs. So I feel like I basically had the knowledge of, like how you have a serial entrepreneur. I know you sold, you bought and sold business, you exited several businesses, etc. You become more and more knowledgeable after each transaction. It's not like the first time that you ever own a business. So I feel that by me being a trusted advisor to other entrepreneurs, it prepared me very well to this role of being a founder and a CEO, because I've seen it. I've seen those problems and I helped solve them. So it doesn't mean that I wasn't like surprised at things or things happened that I didn't anticipate, but it wasn't, I didn't feel like I experienced something that I haven't seen before in some capacity.
Yeah. When you're speaking about the process and being an engineer, I remember reading this book, The Goal, which was phenomenal. And now one of the book that I always recommend to any entrepreneurs, it's like Entrepreneur 101 for me, is the E-Myth.
Myth, yeah, Michael Gerber, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And in the book, it is precisely about building procedure and building processes. Why is it so difficult for entrepreneurs to build processes and procedures?
Because I think it's because of putting the importance. It is always easier to go and sell or close the next deal, sell more, do marketing, go out to a networking event, meet, talk. It's never a priority to actually sit down and build processes. Now, that's a generality. I met plenty of entrepreneurs that actually did that, and that's why they became successful and were able to actually systematize their business. So it really depends on the person, on their skill set, on their inclination.
What would you say to an entrepreneur who is looking for the first time in a very serious way, I would say, at business process and procedure? What would you tell that person why she or he needs to have, what are the benefit of having a process and procedure, and how to effectively document those processes and procedures?
So the first question, the why, I always ask the person, because the person knows. But what are you running into your business that if you had well-documented processes and procedures, you wouldn't have, you wouldn't suffer from? What are the pain points right now? And the answers are always the same. It's either there is lack of consistency that is affecting the operation in some way. It's either they want to sell the business in a few years, in a few months, and they know that the value of the business will be much higher if they had well-documented processes and procedures. It might be that they're hiring right now and they figured out that they don't have a good training system They don't have a good onboarding system. So we create those. It might be risk mitigation. They ran into some problem in terms of delivering their products, or they feel like, they have one person saying one thing and another person saying another thing. Why? Is because you have a key employee that basically has everything in their head, and there is the fear or the trepidation that that employee is going to walk out and all the knowledge is going to walk out the door.
And God forbid something can happen to that employee as well.
Absolutely. It's the famous story that I have, like one of my clients, they hired us because one of their key people that was in charge of accounts receivable, nobody knew what she was doing. And from one day to another, she had an emergency operation and was out of commission for 4 weeks. Luckily,
Wow.
she came back, and then we documented everything that she did. But without it, it would have been a problem. And, so those are the most common reasons why a business would need to document. And also because they see that there are lack of efficiency somewhere and they want to have some kind of an improvement in terms of the efficiency. That is also a reason why to document. Now, to your second question, how do we go about it? So I like to say, it's like little, like bite-sized pieces, right? Like one step at a time. So just like you figured out your why and why do you want to document processes and procedures, I would suggest to look at the company and ask yourself what area of the company, if right now you had well-documented processes and procedures, will get you the biggest return on investment. And that is the area that you need to start. And what is return on investment? Because return on investment, obviously, we all want bigger profits, and that's what it should translate to. But I can tell you plenty of clients that we've worked with, and I always ask this question, like, what does it mean for you? Like, what does success look like for you? If we've been working now, let's say for a year, at the end, I would ask you, at the end of the project, I would ask, what would need to happen at the end of the project for you to know it was a success? I had a client and she told me, I want to be able to actually go to yoga class 1 day a week, and I want to pick up my kids and go to the park on every Tuesday at 4:00. Good, let's do it. Let's figure out what your processes and procedures are, who can wear that hat, how we can document it, and then let's pass that hat to them. That was one example. I just posted a video with a success story from another client that said a similar thing. He was actually able to take a vacation with his wife to go to a wedding of a friend, which he hasn't done for years, without being at work all the time. So that is a return on investment. You invest the time, you invest the funds, and then you're getting back something that is super valuable for you.
Talking about a lot of solopreneur or small business owner that have maybe 10, 15 employee max. And when I say employee, might be people actually that are independent or in another country. How do you make sure that people are following the processes? Especially if I compare to, take my example, where I learn the hard way the importance and necessity of process and procedure that I put in place, but then I had to make sure that people were following them, which is another part of the job. So how do you get process followed by the rest of the organization? And how do you convey the importance of following those processes and procedures?
Great question. So we actually have an 8-step rollout that we do in order to ensure that the processes are followed by all. And the first thing is the mindset. So it starts with the mindset of the entrepreneur themselves. It starts at the top. If you have an entrepreneur who says, oh, procedures are not for me, or that's for somebody else, and I'm the visionary and I don't want to touch processes, and no, well, that's going to be a problem. And then we're not going to get anywhere. So definitely we have to handle that point of having the mindset that processes are important. And we also need to get buy-in from everyone on the team. And we do that. We do that by asking them questions, by finding out what's their why. What will make it worthwhile for them to actually have well-documented processes and procedures? So it's kind of like we sell it to each and every individual in the organization. Another key point in the rollout is that everyone has to actually read and understand the procedures. I know it sounds, you go, Adi, this is like obvious, but it's not. Because many times people will document the procedures, but then nobody reads them. And that's a problem, because if you don't read them, then you don't know what's there. You can't just leave it for the new employee to read it, because
Right.
then there is no uniformity, no agreement, and people are not on the same page. So those are some of the methods. And then we coach our clients on how to use those procedures in day-to-day management.
What is your advice to a business owner if someone is not following the procedure?
It's always either a process problem or a people problem. And my advice is to find out why the procedure is not being followed. Is it obsolete? Is there a better way to do it? Maybe there is a different way to do it. So now what you wrote is already obsolete and people don't want to use it, right? It might be that that person that is supposed to follow the process has disagreements. So let's find out what they are and how to overcome them. You have to dig in. I had a call this morning with a client on that exact subject, and we pinpointed exactly where the process is not being followed. And now the chief of staff is going to get with that employee and actually find out why the process was not followed. What was it? Was it something there that they don't agree with? Is there a different way that they're doing it? Is it something not understood? There are various reasons, but you have to dig in and you have to find out why.
That's a great point. And actually apply the same. I know you also have a podcast. By the way, what's the title of your podcast for those who want to listen?
It's the System Simplified podcast, and you were a guest, and we did a fantastic episode together. Yes.
Thank you. So for my podcast, I put a system in place. And when something is happening once in a while now, thank God we got the good process, I'm thinking, okay, why did that happen? And my next question is, how can we make sure that it's not happening in the future?
Right.
Which is the most important.
Absolutely. That's exactly right.
So in all your experience, what would you say are successful methods to make your business independent of you, so that you have more time for what matters? And by the way, I always say to the people I'm helping, the less you're involved in your business, the higher the value of your business. So what are your proven methods for entrepreneur to basically remove themselves from the daily operation?
So they first of all have to figure out what hats they're still wearing, right? What is it that they're actually doing in the business? And then they have to figure out, that's the knowledge transfer. That knowledge has to be transferred. So it has to be documented. It has to be identified. It has to be documented, maybe optimized. So some of it can be automated or some of it can be optimized. So in being more efficient, because the entrepreneur will have ways of doing things that they know best, right? I know it in my business. There are things that I just know how to do, that I just know best because I either created them or I have the talent, and that's why I started a business. So you need to make sure that it's also optimized so others can actually do it. And then finding and delegating and making sure that what you are doing, somebody else is doing. So nothing falls through the cracks, nothing gets lost. But those hats that you are wearing, we have to identify what they are, write them, like basically write a job description, write a procedure, the processes and procedures, and give it to somebody else so they can execute it.
Right. The giving to somebody else so they can execute it. I just want to link to what you say earlier on. That's really a question of mindset. It's very tempting to say, hold on, let me show you. And then, hold on, I'm going to do it. Instead of letting the person learn about it.
Yeah. It's a discipline. It's a decision. You're right. It's a mindset. It's a decision. Once you make the decision, then it's a discipline in executing it.
Awesome. Now, there's a lot of things that we can discuss, but the format of the podcast is the time constraint is there. But in finishing this conversation today, I'd love for you to share some of the productivity tools, that you like and how to utilize them. I know there's a lot of, when I started my first business, there was little technology, there was no AI, there is no way of hiring a virtual assistant anywhere in the world. So what are your favorite productivity tools that you would advise any business owner to explore and to use?
That's a great question. And it was probably easier to answer it a few years ago when there are just a few. You're right. Nowadays, it's kind of like, it can be like a detriment in itself. Like every day it's a new app, a new thing that we need to use. So we have to be definitely very, I think one of the key components before I answer what are my favorite is to really ask yourself, what is that tool going to do for me? Is it actually going to help me and save me time? Or is it actually going to be like a learning curve and then it's not going to save me time? So I definitely, you have to have a CRM that is working, that is being used. You have to have some kind of a task management software. So whether it's your CRM that does everything, or you use another task management software, which we cannot live without it, like internally in my company, and you have to use it, and you have to create processes around it. I mean, that is a very important key thing, is that when you have a tool, when you have an app, when you have technology, you set up your processes on how that technology is going to get integrated and how it's going to be used in your business. So that's very, very important. And then, of course, the use of AI, but again, not as something that you go blindly doing it, but it's something that you use in order to make things better, in order to really save time and really learn it. Like, for instance, I have several spreadsheets that I had to manipulate the numbers there in order to get to like basically create some kind of a presentation that I needed to do. And I used AI, and what would have taken probably I had to give it to my assistant probably in the past, and it would have taken like 6 hours to do. I was able to do it in 45 minutes, which is amazing, but I knew exactly what I was doing. Also, it's like in order to create summaries for something, you need to know exactly what you're doing. You need to be able to read it, and you need to be able to still add the human touch, which we always do. But so use it smartly in order to actually advance forward and not something that hinders you. And there are and there are apps for a lot of things that basically save you time and save you also on the personal life, right? So it's like, there are so many productivity tools, but again, they have to be productive and not hindering your production.
So give us like 2 or 3 of them that you like, or that maybe you're using in your company.
Yeah, so we use ClickUp, we use, but also if clients use Asana or Monday, and I love those. So those are task management. We use always a process documentation platform, because that saves a lot of time and makes things much, much easier. So I love Sweet Process, Playbook Builder, Well.io, Trainual. There are several of them that I really like, and I interviewed actually on my podcast each one of the founders. So that's an example. We use an internal communication system. So we use Slack, you can use Teams, and we created policies around it. So we don't have internal emails. We communicate all through that. And then, if you have productivity tools and you have, we use AI, we use several of the applications on that, and we use it in order to create content. I love the Script, which is an amazing software for recording and then clipping, the videos and creating all kind of projects in terms of the audio visual. I like my Remarkable notebook, so then I don't have pieces of paper all over the place, but I can just keep notes there, which I think is phenomenal. So those are some of the ideas, some of the applications that we use.
One thing that I've been looking at outsourcing really is the management of my email inboxes.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's a given. I have my office manager handles it like for years now, and I started doing that probably just before the pandemic, and so that was a few years ago, and that was a life-changing experience. And on top of it, I'm using an application. I'm using SaneBox that basically, so it's it is basically helping keep sanity on my email, but that's the only way that I can get to inbox zero. And also, like internally, not having my team send me emails internally helps tremendously, because email is only for clients and collaborators and vendors. And then all of our internal communication is very, very, it's very strict, it's very flowy. We communicate, we are great communicators and we communicate. So I don't want anybody to get the idea that this is like a harsh communication. It's not. It's very, when the channel is very well defined, communication can flow very easily. So we have different channels, and we put our communications on a different channel. We have a very specific way, like we tag people, we use emojis in order to respond and acknowledge. And I think by creating that internal policy on how you communicate, you really have a higher quality of communication, more meaningful and more efficient.
I totally agree. The only thing I would add is don't expect me to answer immediately, because sometimes Slack can be like you're sitting in an open space and anybody and everybody can bother you at any time, so that you have a certain time, if you want, in the response, and expectation are well managed.
Absolutely, and we do that. And one of the things that we also differentiate is when we communicate on Slack or we communicate on ClickUp, our task management software. Because if it is, let's say we are working on a project and there is, let's say you and I are collaborating on a project and we have a question, then you can post your question on ClickUp. I will get to it like within even 24 hours, which is fine, or whenever I get to it, in an agreed upon time. Obviously, it has to not just not answer, but have an agreed upon time.
Yeah.
And it's never like an immediate thing. So we just use Slack when we want to have a conversation back and forth asynchronically, or where something like, let's say my office manager has to alert me that somebody is late, or they want a client cancel, and what do I want to do? But it's never like this drop everything and right now.
Adi, how do people get in touch with you?
Okay, so the easiest way is through LinkedIn. So it's Adi Klevit. So it's ADI and KLEVIT. Very active on LinkedIn. And I think I'm the only Adi Klevit on LinkedIn. I can probably guarantee you that. And you can always go to my website. So it's bizsuccesscg.com. Email me, adi@bizsuccesscg.com. A lot of ways to get a hold of me.
Wonderful. My last question for today.
Yeah.
You never know who's listening, right? So what would be one of your dream, personal, professional, that if someone hear about that dream and said, oh, I can help you, I can help her with that, what would that be?
It's so funny because my dream is to have peace right now and stop the wars. So maybe somebody is listening right now and go, okay, we can do that. Although, Eric, you are definitely, your book, it's an incredible book. And it's Before It's Too Late. And it's great, great, great book. So that's an example of somebody that can help, right? By actually creating some kind of a sanity. But that's really when you ask me for my dream, I go like, what else can I want other than that dream? But you're right. It is, you never know who is listening. And I, always love to help other entrepreneurs that have a worthwhile purpose and put order in. So if somebody's listening right now and say, well, I have too much chaos, or I want to put more order. And, the people that we work with are people that are already super successful, are people that are already moving at a very high speed. And they're just like growing fast, but are just lacking consistency. And if you need my help, call me, get in touch.
Wonderful. Adi, thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you in person very soon.
Me too. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Business of Meeting podcast. I hope you found today's episode valuable. If you enjoyed the show, the most important thing you can do is leave a review and share it with your colleagues. It really helps spread the word. I truly appreciate your support. And if you're ready to take your business to the next level, don't forget to visit eventbusinessformula.com to learn more about how we are helping event business owners like you. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.